Tally-ho, Crown Point, back for another lesson with you guys. Hopefully you got some markers out, and you guys are ready to draw. So, I got my paper all ready, got my markers, got thin marker, some medium-sized markers, thick marker, and doubt we'll need it, but I always got to have that guy around, big old thick marker. So, got my stuff ready, and what I was looking at today was maybe floating cities or cities of the future. So if you guys have ever watched, Star Wars or maybe the Jetsons, you may have seen cities that are like in the clouds, like people can't live on Earth anymore, like we did something so horrible to the environment, or we just can't live on the ground anymore, we must live in the sky. It's a fairly futuristic thought, but for me, that was exciting enough to come up with a drawing for. So I've found some images I'm going to share with you guys. My images are all about just a few examples of what this may look like. And as I put these on the screen for you guys, just look at some of the details in there. When I was a kid, growing up, I used to watch the Jetsons every so often. And I used to think it was really cool to think about flying cars and floating cities in the sky. And so for me, when I think floating cities, I'm really thinking a lot about things way up in the air. Maybe it's hovering some way. And what I'm thinking of is I'm going to have to start with some clouds. So kind of like I do rocks, I'm going to have these lines that overlap, like a hump, a hump, and then it's going to come back straight. And maybe I have straight lines coming out. Those flat lines on the bottom, and that's what I think of when I think of clouds. A hump, a hump, and then it levels out. And if we have enough of these going on, it starts feeling like things are floating. And I might switch markers, and maybe I'll come in with some thin clouds. Like I've talked about before, I use different marker sizes for different clouds or different lines because they're going to give me a different feeling when they're thick or when they're thin. And I'm making layer upon layer of clouds. Because I want depth. I want some of these to be in front, and I want others to be pushed back. And you can see I stop drawing. We're going to run into other lines. Maybe I can even add little fluffy textures. Some of my clouds, just to make them more believable. Look at that. Look at that. And so now what I'm starting to see is up here, because this composition, so I wanted to have a layer of clouds that was low. And I see it as like maybe they come up from a platform. So I'm getting out my real big marker. It doesn't matter if you have one or not. I'm going to see like, and see I'm projecting my line down. You see it's coming through those clouds. Nice old thick line. Yeah, maybe I have a couple of these. So I see it. If you draw over some of your clouds, that's all right. Maybe the cloud wraps around that thing. That's okay. I can even just come back and round that out, square up the edge of that, make those meet nicely. That's just fine. And maybe I'm going to do threes are really nice in art. People like threes. They like odd numbers. Everything can't be even and perfect in drawing. So I see these as like the platforms that the city's going to take shape on. Now I'm going to switch back over to my thin marker, and I see it as these might be closer and this might be further away in my mind right now. So the futuristic shapes, you think of the future, everything's probably made of metal or something. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start lower than the line, and I'm going to have like a big old arc. And it's going to be like a big eyeball shape, right? Like a squished circle, right? Because it's foreshortening. I'm not looking at it straight on, right? Like if I was to grab anything on my desk that's a circle, you can see foreshortening kind of works like this. You can see the nice circle shape, but if I tilt that, you see, yeah, we start getting that kind of shape. And what I'm talking about is the edge there. See, it really changes. Look at it's flat, but right in there, right, you can kind of see that shape. So maybe I've got the same thing going on out here. I go long and back, squished. Cool. Now I'm starting to think about what's on the bottom and what's on the tops of these. So maybe they have a little depth to them. Like there's all the stuff that's holding the city together. Maybe underneath there is all the plumbing and electrical, all the things you need to run a city. So we'll give them some space. If you have a floating city, I'm sure you got all sorts of new problems that we haven't even thought about, right? In our world, flying cars and such. How do you deal with traffic? You're probably going to need some lights, right, on these so people don't crash into your super sweet new floating city. So I'm adding some circles. Circles are nice shapes. Maybe those are like the beacons or lights that people know. Don't crash into this. And maybe they just need to be filled with shapes to convince people that there's things going on there. And not all these have to look the same. Maybe I start those all with circles. But maybe each one of these cities has a little bit different scenario going on. And to me, that kind of feels futuristic. And I also think of maybe what's hanging out underneath here. And maybe, I don't really know, since floating cities aren't a reality in this world. Maybe they have other kind of things. I think of that scene in Star Wars where Luke's hanging down low off like some weird platform, dangling underneath the city, waiting for his ride to pick him up. Maybe they have those kind of things. Maybe over here, maybe they're a little bit longer. Maybe these are like antennas, because if you had a floating city, you could put your antennas instead of on tops of mountains and giant towers. You put your antennas on the bottom of the city. Who knows? Not I. And while I'm doing this, I'm starting in my mind to think about what What's the futuristic city look like up top? Yeah, I kind of like these. You see, they're all variations, right? Some more here, less here. These ones are shorter. These ones are quite a bit longer. Do you have to draw what I draw? Not at all. We're just doing futuristic cities, and I bet you guys have some ideas that I have not even thought of, or things you've seen before. And that's kind of the cool thing about drawing is you get to add your own stuff. You're in the driver's seat here, and you're driving that marker around the page, making lines. So now I've got some stuff going on the bottom, which I like. I'm going to come back, and maybe these have. If they have these little kind of weird shapes coming out, some of them, or maybe some of them have like floating circles around them. Who knows what that is? But if you ask me, that looks futuristic. And I know when I was a kid, Back to the Future 2 was just about the coolest movie I'd ever seen. Because that's when they go to the future and they have hoverboards, flying cars. And people kind of like thinking about places and times that they don't exist in. Look at those kind of shapes. There we go. We got futuristic things happening on these. I kind of like the way it looks when I put two of them on there, like I did there when I started that. Maybe I'm coming up with a new one here. Look at this. Tink, tink, tink. Little circles. That's kind of cool. You know, whenever I watch Star Wars, I always wonder where do they make all that stuff? Like, where's the manufacturing facilities? Like, where do you make a Death Star at? You know, is it prefab construction? Who knows? Because there's just got to be an army of people building all that stuff for the Star Wars universe. Look at those. That's cool. Maybe I'll do one of those again with the circles. Look at that. So I got them all decorated. It's like they're almost like ornaments, right? If you really get into futuristic shapes, nothing is better than like looking at stuff from the 1950s because they thought they were just on the cusp of living in the future. Oh, and I forgot to decorate the edges of these. So I'm going to go through and do those now. Maybe on this one it's going to have some giant circles. Yeah, look at that. That's cool. And maybe this one, on these ones, maybe we're going to have some diagonal lines. Oh, hitting my coffee cup. Speaking of coffee. Mm-mm-mm. Waking me up this morning. Cool. Got those decorated now. Now, what goes on top? I don't know. And so I know I will have shared or put some of those city pictures on the screens for you, but I'm going to go back right now and I'm going to look at some of them. And I see some dome shaped ones. Oh, some of these have signs on them. Some of them have got real just wavy, weird lines. I kind of actually like some of those. A lot of them have layers, and if you look at some, they also have a lot of repeating shapes. You'll see shapes that again and again are coming up. And some of these are really detailed with all the little mechanisms and things they got going on inside of them. Some of them look like just like almost like a normal city. So I'm going to kind of replicate a few of those. So maybe I'm going to have like another tower that comes up to hold. I'm going to do like see, it's like a really flattened Y. I'm going to come across. It almost kind of has this fan shape. And then I'm going to come straight up. Replicate that again. Maybe I'm going to come out from the sides. Make those same kind of shapes again. Maybe I can come up another layer. Oh, this is kind of looking like a weird wedding cake or something. And maybe it's got a huge dome on the top. Like maybe that's like a sports arena or something that they play up in the clouds there. I'm going to give some textures and lines to this just to make it more believable. Because you can't just do shapes if you're drawing something. You got to represent it. And that is the whole trick. See, I'm making that look like glass. Some of my squigglies. And then maybe down here, maybe I've got some real organic shaped buildings. Oh, maybe I'm doing another dome. Yeah, I like the dome. Maybe they got like the football field up there and maybe a baseball field down here. But I don't know. Do they play those sports in the future in the clouds? The world may never know. So I'm also going to, now I'm going to just do a squiggly line. There we go. Just going to make some of these come together. Because when you draw stuff in the future, the reality is no one knows what the future looks like. Maybe I'm going to just have some kind of almost normal looking buildings intertwined here. This makes me think of like Lando in Star Wars with his crazy futuristic cities. So I got that one. There's plenty going on there, and I'm going to look back at my reference material. And oh, I like this. There's one from the Jetsons I see here that's kind of got this cool, like uranium type symbol, like protons and neutrons. Maybe over here, maybe I'm going to replicate some of these. I'm going to do some patterns here. So you see, I'm going to have just a pattern of these shapes. And who knows what they store in these? Maybe this is like futuristic fuel. It's like the holding tanks. Maybe there's like the jet fuel refinery. See, they kind of follow that curve, and maybe I'm going to give some of these. Maybe there's like windows on this stuff so people can like monitor it. Maybe there's like bubbles coming up. Bubble, 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 bubble. Bloop, 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 bloop. So I'm just filling those in. And there's nothing wrong with taking ideas that you see other places. Because in reality, people steal each other's ideas all the time. And if you can steal an idea and borrow an idea and build off of it and make it your own, that is then your own idea. That is how people learn to be creative, is mixing ideas together. That's why I always look at stuff when I draw. I might not be the best drawer ever, but I can certainly use other people's creativity, mix it with my own creativity, and come up with something new. So now I'm going to start adding some stuff behind here. Maybe this is like a huge tank up back here. And then maybe there's some more of these up here. Because repetition is a good way to make sure things are believable. And maybe I'm not going to fill those all the way in. I'm going to fill them with some dots, make it look like the same things going on in those. And then maybe up here, I'm going to borrow that from the Jetsons. They kind of had this like spire. And then they had, right? Kind of like this nuclear power kind of logo on the top. Maybe that is the place you go gas up your super rocket. So I'm going to look back at some of my pictures, see if I can borrow some other ideas. And maybe over here, maybe this is going to be like the city, like where all the people live and eat and go out to eat. Right. So maybe I'm just going to kind of replicate what I think of as a city, which is going to be a bunch of these buildings. So I'm just going to start with different shapes, some small. So put the small ones, some couple small ones up front. You see, I'm keeping all those roof lines. They're all a little angled. Now I can just start piling them on top of each other that overlap. Do you see it just that one? So you can see that building's coming behind. It's going behind. And then you can get bigger. And if I keep replicating these things, you'll see it's going to get full. And now my hand's pushing my laptop. I want to fill it all the way in. And I got some really big buildings back there. Because your mind just fills in the rest, right? Your mind decides that because it's so full, there's just got to be more there. And if there's more there, it looks dense. So maybe this is like the Tokyo or New York City of the future. I'm going to add some lines to make these look a little more believable. Maybe some of these have some circles on them or ovals. Kind of like the idea of some of these buildings like having, look at that. You see I replicated that line. So I had one curve, another curve. Looks like you could fly your car right through that building. Which, I don't know, maybe that's how you get to the parking garage. I don't know. But it's just those lines. They're going to make it look like it's believable. And I can't wait to see what some of you guys come up with. Sometimes you guys are my biggest source of inspiration for things. You guys always come up with good stuff to share with me. So now I see I've got lots going on here in my futuristic city. Maybe I'm going to start adding some just different stuff on the bottoms here. Just to give it details. Because you never know. Maybe I go with some of those oblong shapes again. And then what's occurring to me now is if we're going to make sure people believe this is in the sky, I've got to come back and I'm going to add in some more clouds way back there, right? These are way, way back there. I'd have to fly my jet way past the city to get to those clouds. Maybe there's clouds even coming off of the tops of some of these. See, that's just going in the background there. And it's those layers upon layers of things. It's going to make your drawing look sweet. Way back there. And I'm just looking just all over the page. And they would need to be little, right? They're much littler than these ones. See, when things are close, oh, I didn't even notice I didn't finish that line. My marker didn't. Kind of gassed out there. It's those little clouds. Because they might be as big as these, but they're so far back there. They're tiny, right? Because that's how it works. Things that are far away get littler. Look at that. That is a city fit for George Jetson and his boy Elroy. Look at that. You just made yourself a coloring sheet. How cool is that? All right, Crown Point, futuristic cities. I want to see yours. Send those along. Take a picture of it and email it to me or attach it to this Google Classroom. And I want to see what you guys came up with. The best part is seeing what you guys do. Take care, stay healthy and happy.